Tommy, I don't know if you've seen Cool Runnings, but there's a scene where they arrive at the top of the hill. You know, I don't think they've ever seen black people up there before, and that was how it always was with me and my dad, particularly when we first started, how that felt.
Louis, how are you? You okay?
I'm really well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. You know,
I haven't seen you for so long.
I know, a long time no see. That's what I said. I'm, you know, trying to deal with what's happening. I'm sure the same with you. I'm sure the same with Mr. Smith, dealing with what's happening right now, COVID-19 and whatnot. But
yeah. Where are you? Are you in the States?
I'm in Montreal. I'm the coach here of the team, but it's been so difficult to coach at the minute because we keep on stopping, we keep on going to bubbles, and we keep on, you know how it is. It is what it is. It's not the easiest to be prepared or to prepare a team, but it is what it is.
How about where are you, Tommy?
Oh, I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta now for a while. Yeah. We do a lot of things here, dealing with equality and dealing with young people. You know, the Tommie Smith Youth Initiative is a 501 that we've been running now for quite a few years. You know, helping youngsters do what they should be doing, which is moving forward. Of course, you both know there's a platform of moving forward. A lot of platforms moving forward.
Sure. Whatever
platform you're on, you've got to have an identification of it. You just can't run out there and say, my cool buddy was on this, man. I went with him. No, you got to think first. You got to think.
Absolutely.
You can't hit that corner going 160 miles an hour when you know that it's 110 miles an hour curve, you know. You've been a striker too, yourself, Thierry, right? You was a striker.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You don't even look like you've aged. I don't understand.
I don't know about that.
What's going on?
Yeah, well, you know how it is. When you decide to do something, you do it. When you got to hit, you got to hit. You know, when you got to move in a direction, you got to think about that direction. There's no midair for you, then switching in midair. Once you get midair, you got to keep going.
I've been so inspired by you and what you did all that time ago. And I never in my life thought there would be a moment like yours that would perhaps come up for me. And, you know, I'm in a sport which is, you know, white dominated, and there's not very little diversity here, for example, and with everything that happened in the States, it really brought up a lot of emotions for me, because, you know, a lot of people think that it's only happening in the States, but yes, there's the police brutality in the States, but, you know, systemic racism is across the world, and very, 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 very much there, and in Europe and England. And so, you know, I experienced a lot of that growing up in the UK, and then when I started traveling racing. And so anyways, I this year it's come around, and I've got the sport now to kind of acknowledge that it needs to do more. And I had a race that I won at home, and I got to do the stance like you did with the power, with a punch in the air, just like you did.
Yes,
I was like, this must be how Tommy felt, but obviously I didn't have the crowd like you had. Or the gold medal.
Well, you know, like I said earlier, that there's a lot of things going into an organization. Perennial thought has to be put there, and the fist in the air represents the power that we need to move forward. Some people call it black power, some people call it power to move, some people just call it power.
Yeah.
But it was an inner motivating method of mine to make a move as a young black man in this country. Yeah. And I wanted to, since it started at San Jose State University, which I graduated from, that platform started there. And I wanted to end it as one of the people who started it, along with the 3 other people there. And, you know, when the athletes decided that they didn't want to boycott, we had been talking about this all year long. And I can understand that. They didn't want to boycott because a lot of people had other things on their mind. So they're like a democratic process of, you know, let's vote. So we voted, and the end result was each athlete would represent himself according to how he felt the country represented them. And so we all took our own stand. We shook our hand, we hugged each other. Then we adjourned the meeting. Now this was some days before the race. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I had to do something to maintain a forward momentum so it could historically move forward.
Like Louis, I'm a bit older than Louis, and I was born in '77. My dad told me the story, told me how it was. He gave me the date, 16th of October, 68. That date is always going to be in my mind. I heard that story so many times. I saw the pictures so many times. I have the picture in my house. But what actually, I didn't know were the signs. I didn't know that the socks were for poverty. I didn't know that the fist up was for power and tranquility. And I didn't know that you had your head down for hope and you're praying. Yeah. I just thought for me, black power, you know, you know, I was like, it's raw. I didn't know that there was a message with the socks, there was a message actually with the glove, and there was a message with you having your head down. And so when I started to understand that, I started to understand that you can fight in a clever way. Because you had to do it, as you said. Maybe you didn't want to do it, but you had to do it because you had to carry on the momentum. And so you put your success on the side. You knew that something was going to happen against you, but you went with your community. How did you deal with that? Faith.
I had faith in my belief, in my spiritual belief, which is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But without work, faith is dead. You know, that's why the momentum is important. And you're very right. I had doubts about doing it, but I had to do it. You know, sometimes you have to do things that you know is right, but you're afraid to do it because it's going to hurt you later on. Because that hurt didn't bother me once I thought of who died so I could be there. And the latest person that died that I respected more than a lot of other things was Dr. Martin Luther King only 6 months before. And you had other very advisory people who died fighting for equality, fighting for the rights of man, fighting human rights. Yes, we were young. I just had turned 24 years old, but I was a thinker. You know, I had to think before I moved. It's better to think before you move than to try to change what you did because you didn't think. Yeah. And you both know that sometimes you have to make a split decision thought and move that way. But you have to accept those responsibilities no matter what direction you move. And so I just kept moving. I went back to school. I went to school at night. I was afraid to go to school daytime because my life was being threatened almost on a daily basis. Wow. I will kill you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, you know? Wow. So I think I passed a test of durability, like a good pair of tires.
I grew up in a bad neighborhood, which I thought at the time was the best neighborhood in the world because I couldn't compare it to anything, right? So where I was is the best place in the world. So because you have a lot of diversity in my neighborhood, I didn't realize that I was different. When I stepped out of my neighborhood, I started to realize people started to make me feel that I wasn't human. And so it started to be difficult. And so I realized that, you know, the color of my skin was a problem. What I wear was a problem. Because in Europe, sometimes if you have a hood on, if you have the hat on, suddenly a cap, shall I say, suddenly that means you're from a bad neighborhood straight away. And if you have the color to go with it, that's a double bill. You know, you don't get in. And so I always say to people that at one point, people didn't see my color anymore because I played football. Yeah. Because I was, in bracket, famous. You never had that opportunity young. When you know now and you're an athlete, you kind of get away with it. You know, if I come now with my hood or in a tracksuit and I walk into an amazing shop or a expensive shop, they'll say, "Oh, Mr. Henry, what do you want?" Yeah. If it wasn't me, trust me, the security guard would have been following me or not even letting me in. So sometimes for me now to judge and know it's very difficult. But I can tell you one thing. When I came to play in the US, my color came back because nobody could recognize me sometimes. Depends on where, in which state we were. My color came back. And that was the first time that I went back to the first time I left my neighborhood where I was on amongst, in brackets, a certain community that wasn't looking at you like you're from another planet. So when I arrived in New York, some people could recognize me sometimes and some couldn't. You ask for a cab, the cab puts his head down, looks and see that you have a certain color and go like, puts the light on, is not free anymore or off, sorry. And I'm like, wait, hang on a minute, I'm alone here, it's raining, can I get, and so I was like, it hit me again. Back in the days, you got field for something that you're getting praised for now.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of, that is why I say at times it's good to be stubborn. I've been called a black shit live on TV. It is what it is. You've heard it before also, but that was live on TV, which is made it a bit like, wow. And so I used also my sponsors and sport to make sure that you can create awareness, because sport is a great tool at the end of the day. You can't stop talent. That's why it's good when you're at the top to make sure that you can have an impact.
When I was reading and watching the documentary about you, Tommie, I'd seen that the Olympics Committee had said that this is not a platform for anything political or for anything that's not sport. And I love that you went against it, even though that you knew it was detrimental to your career. That is such a huge risk that you took, and I have so much respect for you. I mean, and what's crazy is that even you passing on the baton kind of to us, like I'm finding that I found that already still in today's world. They question whether or not this is the platform. We don't like to associate ourselves with politics, and I'm like, this is not really politics. This is about humanity, and we have this platform, as so many other sports around the world do, and we have the spotlight on us right now. What are we going to stand for? Yes, we can do and perform well and put on a great show, but what are we actually teaching people? And I think that's, you started it back then, and I'm really trying to embrace what you had done so long ago, which I really can't even imagine. I mean, as I said, I've watched a lot of documentaries, because school I don't know how it was for you, Thierry, but school in England, you learn about white history. You don't learn about Malcolm X. You don't learn about Martin Luther King. You don't learn about Nelson Mandela. Those are the things you have to do at home.
All the people. I mean, no disrespect. Surely there must be some black heroes out there, black astronauts, black poets, black artists, back in the days, whatever, that can inspire you also, or whatever it is. And I agree with you. Yeah, you learn in a certain way. I like to say, you learn the history of the country that it was maybe 15 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 40 years ago. You don't learn the history of the country that it is now, because of what happened, and invasion and whatnot. But I agree with you. Yes, Louis, it was the same.
Yeah. But the thing is, because fundamentally, still, it's not changed.
No.
No, and that's the sad thing, to think that Tommie and Martin Luther King were fighting. It was only 60 years ago, and we still have America has really not moved enough, and we can't stop utilizing the platforms that we have. We can't stop trying to encourage people to educate themselves. But we still have this fight, and we've got to keep going.
We have a responsibility, and the youth look up at winners. The system, human being, loves winners. Don't take the pressure as a pressure that you didn't have responsibility for. It is your responsibility to accept that pressure and move forward.
I totally understand, and this is why winners are pretty rare. That's why when you're at the top, you win, okay? And then you have that platform to be able to express yourself for a community. But we also have to think about the guys that are running the race. Not the one that are going to win it, but for me, what I respect is when you enter the race and you run. That's one of the most important things. And one thing that I would say right now is I don't know if it's going to change right now, but obviously we need to have an impact, but people are listening. This is the difference now. People are at least listening. It's very important. And what you did, for example, I always say, not obviously I excuse myself for the people that are blind, but I always say that there's something worse than being blind. It's having eyesight with no vision. And you saw the future. This is why you imagine the future. And that's for me something very important, because we need to think about the guys that are not going to win the race to be able to have that impact higher. Yeah. We need to think about the guys that are running the race because they entered it because they were not scared. This is why we are the winners, in brackets, sorry to say, and then we need to have that little impact to make sure that the voice of the guys that are running the race are going to be heard.
I think before this time, if I had said anything, people would have got even more defensive. And if Thierry had said too much back then, again, you'd just get negativity and a lot of pushback. But I think now that we have the mic, we have the attention, and what are we going to do with it? What do we actually want? How can we make change? It's down to education. It's how the children are educated, I think, which is where it starts.
But I wanted to ask you a question. I always say to people, who helps the helper? Because when you're the guy always to help, Louis, you're the same. You're always the guy that, people as to, you are helping people, you're doing this, you're doing that. So who helped you the most going through all of that?
I'll let him, since he's the youngest, and I'll close his out.
Oh, well, I mean, I fully agree with you with that there's faith, and then there's my father. So, when I was going to those races when I was a kid, we were the only black people on the race scene. And Tommy, I don't know if you've seen Cool Runnings, but that's always like usually my favorite movie. But there's a scene where they arrive at the top of the hill, and they're the only, I don't think they've ever seen black people up there before, and that was how it always was with me and my dad, particularly when we first started, how that felt. And but I was always fortunate. I was like, I know I can lean back on my dad, and he was that. When people ask me who is my hero, there are those that have laid the bridges, as you were mentioning, that I've read about and have been so inspired about for standing up against things. But my dad was the one who did it in front of me. When I was being beaten and battered and abused, he was the one that would fight for me. Wow. And so I was very, very fortunate to have that. But it wasn't until I was born Catholic, and I didn't get to really truly understand faith until I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, when I really started to embrace the word, and that really helped me get through, particularly as I turned professional. That's what really helped me, having the faith really helped me get through that period.
I'm going to say my dad too, by the way. It's the same with me. My dad told me the best thing ever was, obviously, when you arrive, and obviously being black folks arriving in the country, always is, guys, you got to fit. Make sure you fit. You don't you don't scream too much. You don't, you got to fit. My dad said to me, no, you don't have to fit. You have to belong. You always, like I always say, we're talking about education. You're always a reflection of your education with a pinch of salt. That's going to be your character. But I always say this one. My parents educated me. My kids re-educated me. Because your kids make you see, do stuff, and be a bit less raw.
Yeah.
To be able to understand how you need to speak, to put the message out there a bit better. Because sometimes if you're too raw with it, message won't go down too well. That is why the message of the sock, the message of the fist, the message of the head down, because of prayer and hope. This is for me, where you fight in an intelligent way.
Thierry, what's interesting when you said that your dad said that you have to belong. My dad would say something similar, but he would say you will belong there one day, but right now you need to fit in.
Yeah, but that's exactly the thing.
Yeah, because for us, we know there were no other people, there weren't no other people of color within our sport, and so he's like, we've got to work twice. The thought on a lot of black people's mind is like, we've got to work 10 times as hard as the white kid that's next to you. And so, but I remember feeling as I grew up that I had to fit in to get in. And then once I was in, then I could become, then I could become me. I could be who I wanted to. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say with that is, Mr. Smith and obviously Louis, I don't know if I love to listen to West Indian music, French West Indian music. And before he told me that, before he unleashed me, shall I say, you know, when you put your music, you don't want to put it too loud because you think that you're going to disturb, because it's not the music of where you're living at the moment. You don't want to wear your cultural clothes because you're like, if I do, I won't fit in. And as soon as he told me that, my headphones were loud as hell, because I'm like, I'm listening to West Indian music. I'm proud to be French, but I have some origins. Sorry, that's me. And so you start to accept yourself, like people always say, you know, love your enemy a bit more sometimes than your friend. And then the says, I started to love myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because your own enemy is, the first enemy is you only.
It's difficult for some people to be themselves because they are in a hurry to please what they think other people would like. You know, and you could be in your own prison all your life by trying to pacify the thought process of someone else.
Yeah.
You know, well, what that is walking on water. And I don't know one person can walk on water. And, you know, his people, he died because people didn't believe in him, you know?
Yeah.
It's utterly amazing. So what you did, Terry, and what you're doing, Louis, is just taking the world and it's molding. Well, it's molding because, Louis, you have a world. Terry, you have a world. Tommy, I have a world. And it's called the globe. And we're all in it. It's like stress. You know, you have stress, then you have a lot of little stressors to make that big stress. So we have more than one direction to go to help others in need. But you got to keep that in mind now. But too much, this is my own makeup. Too much of anything is not good. Too little of the same is just as bad. Yeah. So you have to know when to say no. You have to know when to say yes, because you're living in this vacuum of being in the world. You're already here. You know you're going somewhere, and that world's going to end too. So where are you in that dash? What are you doing to make this end positive for the generation next to you or the people on the other side of it?
So we were in a tournament recently. Obviously, as you know, we get tested all the time, every 2 days, because same with you, I'm sure, right now. And so they wanted to take my blood. But you know, in the US, they like to put people in the box. So they arrived and they went, "What's your ethnicity?" So I looked at the lady. I went, "Well, if you want to go back to my older story, I don't actually know." Because we would have to go really far. And can I ask you something? I said, "Why do you like to box people in the US?" There was Irish, Afro-American, whatever boxes. I said, "You're forgetting the most important box. I'm human. The blood test will tell you what I need. That's all you need to know." Because in Europe, you don't arrive and are you Caucasian? Are you African-American? Or are you Afro-European? Are you? So I said, "You're missing the main box is I'm human." She looked at me, she went, "Nobody ever gave me that one." I said, "Well, that's the only box, I'm human or alien." Well, I don't look like an alien. So can you put human? And I tick human. If not, the rest I don't know. So
I love that.
What do I do? I said, "Well, it's all we do the blood test, and the blood test will tell you what I need or don't need. But the other thing, I'm going to take a guess on the box, because my story is a complicated one."
What's interesting, Thierry, is that, and I'm sure for you, Tommy, when I'm probably even more so when I'm in America, most Black people don't know where they're from.
Yeah.
You know, I'll ask them, you know, what's your background? Where your family from? And they're like, "I'm from America." You know,
I'm from
they lost those roots so long ago, and it's really interesting for me because my family were my dad's side were from Grenada in the West Indies, and my whole life I just thought they're from the Caribbean. I never actually learned where they came from in Grenada. I was never taught that. I read that. I discovered that this year. So there's been a bit, you know, even for us that you know, for Black people and people of color, it's you can still learn. And I've been going through a process of having to educate myself this year, more stuff that I missed when I was growing up, stuff that perhaps my dad didn't talk about, and you know what colorism is, and all these different things.
I'm gonna read something, this one, because I always like to read it. And actually it's kind of weird because who taught me that is Public Enemy. A Public Enemy song starts with this: have you forgotten that once we were brought here, we were robbed of our names, robbed of our language, we lost our religion, our culture, our God, and many of us, by the way we act, even lost our mind. Dr. Khalid Mohammed. And that right there, there's nothing else to explain.
Yeah.
If someone takes everything away from you, your identity, your faith, and everything that goes with it, you need to start again, refresh, and adapt to where you are. That is why most of the time people say, okay, let's start from here, away from here now.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna defend. Nobody's gonna move us from here. If you go back, you know that your name is not your name.
Mm-hmm.
You know that. But because it's your name, you have to start somewhere. If not, you're lost forever. This is for me where it starts. Putting houses, computers, and people that can educate people in the so-called, not so-called, unprivileged area, where you can educate young folks to know what really happened, where they're from, in order to know where they have to go.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're from and where you come from and who you are, you can never become who you got to be or who you might be. And so that's why sometimes the bad neighborhood and unprivileged neighborhood do not get connected to access to computer, access to knowledge and education. And then instead of going that way, year by years, it goes that way. And so you stay in what you know, and you come from that house, and that's what it is. You never open your eyes and your mind on everything. And I think there is nothing worse than someone that is not allowed to dream and hope. And that's what you kill by disconnecting yourself to the real world.
Yeah.
You don't dream and you don't hope.
Thierry, it's firstly so good to see you, man, because I don't know how we lost touch, brother. We got to get back in touch.
Yes.
And
I will forward my number to, sorry.
Yeah, no, but, you know, it's such an honor for me, man. When I heard that I get to talk to you guys, you know, Tommy, I don't know if you know, but Thierry played for, I grew up when I was 5. I started supporting Arsenal, and Thierry came and was on my team many years ago. So, like, I was like, at the time, Thierry, you know, you're not actually that much older than me, to be honest, but you were like a hero at the time. And
oh, wow, thank you.
So when we got to play, you know, it was incredible. And then,
embarrassing me, you're embarrassing me now. Thank you.
and as I said, Tommy, you know, for people like myself, and I think for Thierry as well, we would be nowhere if we didn't have people like you who have built those bridges and led us to where we are today. And I see it, you know, I think maybe more now than when I was 25, and I'm 35 now, and I see the responsibility I have, and I see that from people like yourself. And yes, winning these races is a good thing. You know, what got you across that finish line first, that's what pushes me across the finish line today, to know that I can get on top and make that move and make it count. And so I want to say a big thank you to you. Just want to acknowledge you, brother.
You're welcome.
So like you said, nice speaking to you, and let's speak soon.